Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. I am your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, I'm joined in by my prospect experts here at the Hockey Writers, Peter Baracchini and Dayton Reimer. Peter, how's it going? We got some stuff happen. Well, we had a big trade I was a little after we recorded. We're going to talk about that. So how's it going?
Doing great. Yeah, it seems like all the prospect trades and everything are happening right now. And Matt, I'm just going to get this out of the way. I'm sorry, and I feel your pain.
Yeah. I'll give my thoughts in a second on that one. Dayton, how's it going?
Oh, things are pretty good. Yeah. Not a lot is happening with the Senators, so I've got to just watch everyone else. So
yeah,
things are good.
Not a lot. Yeah. Not a lot has happened in the NHL in general because of the All-Star break, but prospects are still playing. They had All-Star game in the AHL. We're going to take a look at that, do a check-in on the AHL and then the OHL. But before that, we're going to talk about some trades that happened and ones that may happen because a lot of that happens around the trade deadline. Prospects get moved in these deals, so we'll talk a bit about that. Before we do, we at the Hockey Writers have recently expanded our content into the Substack universe, and we have one dedicated to every team. We also got one to the NHL draft and prospects content. So sign up to get all the best prospect articles delivered directly to your inbox multiple times a week. We also got the premium tier with exclusive articles, mailbags, interviews, stuff like that. You can find a sign up link in the video description below, so check that out. Okay, well, let's talk about a couple trades that have happened this season already. One that happened a bit ago. We'll start with that one because we never really talked about it. We kind of did it in passing at the time, but let's talk a bit about the Gauthier, Jamie Drysdale trade. It was a 1-for-1. It was a bit surprising. I don't think anyone expected this. Gauthier was coming off a great World Juniors. Top prospect, I would say, of the Philadelphia Flyers, maybe around where Matvei Michkov is. I'll start with you, Peter. What did you think about that trade? I mean, Drysdale looks like he's fit in with Philadelphia really well. Gauthier keeps ripping up the NCAA. What do you think about that trade?
Yeah, you caught everyone off guard, really. I mean, nobody knew the situation, what was happening behind the scenes when we found out that, Flyers reps said, or there was a whole representation thing going on where, reps were saying, oh, Gauthier is committed throughout the season. Nope, nothing happened. Then they went to talk to him at the World Juniors. Nope, I'm on out. So long story short, it's just, player didn't want to be there. Simple as that. But it seemed like a long-winded process and one where it kind of left a sour taste in a lot of Flyers fans' mouth as a result of that. Because it kind of led them on saying that, yeah, he's going to join, but then no. But initial thoughts, it's great for both sides. Gauthier wanted out of there. He didn't want to be a part of the organization. Fair enough. And give someone like Jamie Drysdale a fair opportunity, not necessarily a fair opportunity. He was getting it in Anaheim. It's just he was injuries plagued him with the Ducks, unfortunately. And it really sucked because as soon as when he was starting to take off with the Ducks, more injuries happened. And now that he's in not necessarily I would say a better system compared to was with the Ducks, they're still rebuilding, but Flyers are sort of like teetering on that competitive side, trying to push for a playoff spot. And now they got a solid puck moving defenseman. It's one of those moves where both sides benefit from it. Flyers got a puck moving defenseman. They had to give up a big asset in Gauthier, but now the Duck system is just completely filled with riches now that you add Gauthier into that. And this kind of reminded me of that Ryan Johansson, Seth Jones trade like years back, where it's kind of like similar to that 1-for-1 kind of thing. I think there's like a pick involved as well in this deal, but the trade-off is going to pay off for both sides where, one side is happy with their player that they got, and the other side is definitely happy with what they got. And like you said, Jamie Drysdale's fitting right in. He's got 3 points in 8 games. Small sample, but it seems like, he's getting a little bit more comfortable and acclimated with the system. And Gauthier, getting onto that team with, McTavish, Carlson, Zegras. The defense is starting to come up right now. Just wow. Just wow. You really can't say much about that.
Yeah, the Ducks are stacked on defense, so really they got so many great defensemen in their system. It's Drysdale was maybe he wasn't really a prospect anymore because he had some experience, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where Gauthier fits in. And I'll ask you about that, Dayton. Where does Gauthier fit into the prospect pool with the Ducks? Is he one of their top prospects now? The top prospect? I mean, they got so many guys. What do you think about him fitting in with the Ducks?
I think that acquiring him may have made Zegras expendable.
Mm-hmm.
So Zegras seems to be showing up in the trade rumors now, which, 2 months ago we would have thought was ridiculous. Like, it's that recent that a lot of this has changed. And he doesn't seem to be kind of in the same situation as Gauthier was with Philly. Doesn't really seem to be clicking with that team. I bet you a lot of stuff is going to come out. So I think Gauthier kind of takes over as the top young guy in their system, maybe second behind Leo Carlson. But he won't be a prospect much longer if he's not already. And it's a really good situation for him because he'll be ready in a couple of years when he leaves Boston College. I wouldn't imagine he's there for more than 2. And he'll be joining a team that is ready to go. That's his timeline. Philly was kind of ready to go now or next year with a lot of their players. And that's where Drysdale is. So basically echoing what Peter said, the timelines fit much better for these prospects based on the team that they're in. And I think it's a great situation for Gauthier. And he takes over that number 1 prospect guy, I would think, 1 or 2.
Yeah, he's definitely in there. Like he was, I would say, again, in Philly, probably around where Matvei Michkov in prospects, and maybe even ahead of him because he is older. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits in the Ducks lineup and when he plays. So, but yeah, great situation for both. I mean, Gauthier didn't want to be in Philadelphia, so and Briere did a great job getting something for him, a pretty substantial in that situation, right? So yeah, overall pretty good. Hey, let's move on to the second big trade, the most recent. Hunter Brzustewicz, Joni Jurmo, the 2 main prospects in this trade going to the Calgary Flames. Elias Lindholm. Andrei Kuzmenko was in there too, but he's no prospect. We're not going to talk about him. But we do talk about, I've talked about Brzustewicz so many times on this show that I was a bit gutted when he was in that trade. But when I looked at it, they didn't have to give up Villander. They didn't have to give up Lekaramaki. 2 other prospects that could have been in that trade as well. But Brzustewicz is, you sell high on a guy that's just ripping up the OHL right now, on pace again for close to 100 points. I don't know if he's still on pace for over 100, but around that range still. And you don't know if he's going to become anything. I mean, we see guys rip up the OHL and don't make the NHL. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops. And I was excited to see that development, but the Canucks are win now, it seems, right? And they have to make some moves. And to get a guy like Lindholm, you have to add in a prospect like Brzustewicz. So overall, I didn't like that Brzustewicz is gone, but Lindholm helps the Canucks win a cup or go far in the playoffs. I'm good with it. And hopefully re-signs as well. So start with you, Dayton. What do you think about this trade? I mean, 2 pretty good prospects. Jurmo has kind of fallen off a little bit. He was a 3rd round pick back in, it's like a few years ago.
2020.
But he's kind of bounced around a bit in Finland. I think he's still going to end up being an NHLer, but what do you think about these 2 guys being moved to the Flames?
Well, I think Brzustewicz is definitely like the jewel in the crown for Calgary. They needed to get some guys to sort of help this rebuild. And from what I've heard, they're not going to try to do a full-on rebuild and tear it completely down. It's more of a restructuring, kind of modeled after the Rangers in the last several years. I think Brzustewicz fits that timeline very well for them. He's going crazy in the OHL right now. Like you've said so many times on this podcast. And yeah, like add in his right shot, and that's a top four guy for Calgary. I think he makes the team probably in a couple of years, has a year in the AHL. That's their timeline. So that's a really good ad for them. Yeah, Canucks sold high on it. I think Jurmo might be more of just a throw-in. He is a third rounder. He did have some good showings. And he looks okay now that he's changed teams in Liga, but I can't see him more than like a bottom pairing guy right now. He's really dropped off. He's 6'4". Yeah, that's always nice. You got a big body back there. But yeah, for a puck moving defenseman, he's just not moving the puck. And if there's more going on in his game, I haven't seen it. So I like Calgary taking a risk like that, grabbing an extra guy who could be good, especially I think after they got a first round pick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Like, sure, maybe he does end up to be that top four, middle four guy, or middle pairing, I guess. And if he doesn't, whatever, they still have Brzustewicz.
Yeah. I mean, Jurmo, I was high on a bit when he was drafted because I think they got him a little hot. I don't know if he was a second rounder, but probably got drafted where he was supposed to. So it's going to be, I mean, I was, like I say, I was interested to see where he would end up too. That's two defensemen now out of the system that they've been drafting, trying to load up on that. So they're going to have to do something with that. This draft, they don't have many picks now. Like their first pick is in, I think it's the third round, and then not until the 5th and 7th or something like that. So I won't be really focusing on the draft this year for the Canucks for the first time in a long time.
That sounds weirdly familiar.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna, yeah, whatever. I'll be able to cover the playoffs for the first time in a long time too, so that's good. Peter, what do you think about this? I mean, like I said, we've talked about Brzustewicz a lot on this show. Jurmo maybe not so much, but what did you think about this trade?
Yeah, again, like the news just came out of nowhere. I mean, right before the All-Star break, but this is a move that, it does benefit both sides. I mean, the Vancouver Canucks, they want to win it right now. They're showing that they're a top team. What might as well go with that chance of that risk and go all in, They're at the top of they're like the conference leader for a reason. They got the depth, and Elias Lindholm makes them that deeper, but the way that the Flames are going, like Dayton said, they're trying to go for like a quick retool, restructure kind of thing. And looking at their depth chart, they really did not have a whole lot of substance on the back end in terms of puck moving mobile defenders. You had Jeremy Poirier, but he's still a little bit more of a high risk, high reward defender that can still be a defensive liability at times. Etienne Morin had some good showings and improved the stock throughout last year's draft. They took him. So there's some more upside there, but Brzustewicz and Jurmo give them a little bit more depth and substance on the back end. Brzustewicz with his playmaking and ability to be a factor in transition. Jurmo with his skating, I mean, it was a big factor for him in his draft year, was selling point for the Canucks for them to draft him, but also maybe to just get pucks on net because he's got the size and the frame. Maybe that could be a little bit more of a factor for them. But again, he's a left shot, so it kind of balances out the pairings for them, and they have more options at their disposal. So I think it's a good pickup. Obviously, Brzustewicz is the main prize for the Flames. Yeah. If Jurmo is able to come over work with the Flames club, be it in the AHL or, I doubt he's going to make the NHL anytime soon, but if he comes over, works his way in the AHL, develops his game, owns his craft, and then manages to take those steps and could potentially be a 4 to 6 guy for them in the future. We'll see what happens, but he's got to make that jump over sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it definitely increases their, like you said, the Flames don't have a lot of prospects coming on defense. I mean, probably nothing really substantial. So you add that, who knows what happens. Brzustewicz could end up being a top 4 guy. I thought he has potential to do that. But they needed to get someone, and I think he's as good as anyone from the Canucks. I don't think the Canucks had Villander. If they wanted him, I don't think they would have said yes. He's their top prospect on defense. So yeah, overall an interesting trade, and we'll see how it all plays out in the Canucks. And if they re-sign Lindholm, if they don't, then all these guys are gone for nothing. So it's going to be an interesting offseason, not just for Lindholm, but Pettersson, Hronek, lots of guys the Canucks need to re-sign once the offseason starts. So that's gonna be something to follow. Okay, well, let's do some predictions of guys that could be traded. There's, like I say, the deadline is interesting because you got teams that are trying to beef up their lineups for the playoffs, so they have to trade prospects, first round picks, stuff like that. Dayton, do you have anyone in mind that you think could be on the block in the NHL right now? Any of the teams?
Yeah, I've got two, if you'll let me do that.
Go for it.
Just two. They're very similar. It's why I grouped them together. So I think the first one is Philip Broberg in Edmonton. He is a former top pick, but just hasn't really found his way into that team. And that team is doing awesome. And they're probably going to try to find another guy to add. I think Gensel has been connected to them in recent reports. You're going to have to pay big to get big. And that means Broberg is potentially somebody that they could move to get that. They're not hurting on defense. Of course, adding Broberg would be good, but having Evan Bouchard is also really nice. And they're going to keep Bouchard, obviously.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just, he's one of those guys that kind of needs a change of scenery. So making him available to bring in a top six guy, or maybe even get some help on goaltending, that's somebody I think could be comfortable in moving. Now, another guy, also a defenseman, also's kind of not found his way onto his team, is Ville Heinola.
Yeah.
And the Winnipeg Jets are in a very similar situation where they're likely going to try to go all in. They've already added Sean Monahan. And adding someone else is almost a guarantee. Moving another former top pick like Heinola would be something I think that they could manage. And also, you've got, I think, Logan Stanley in there and some other really talented defensemen. So I think Heinola's had some injuries that just has kind of kept him out of the lineup, had a really good start. So having him in a new team would be, I think, a really good thing for him. Maybe, somewhere a little further east.
You have someone in mind there.
I know. Ottawa needs to do something. And I feel like it's just all wrong answers. I don't know. It's such a messy situation. Can talk about that later, though.
Yeah. Heinola is an interesting one because he has been, he's dealt with injuries, like you said. He had such a great, I think it was one little stint there with the Jets where he looked really good and he looked like he was kind of finding it. And then I think he got injured. And that's just so tough. I know that from, for the Canucks here with Juolevi, like he would just keep getting hurt. And it's so hard for a prospect to get some development and then all of a sudden have that setback and have to restart again. So Heinola's had to do that a couple times. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets moved because that's a guy that I think still has a lot of upside in the future because he's really young still. So Peter, you got anyone in mind that could be moved, young player prospect right now?
I also have two, and I'm kind of glad Dayton didn't take my two. Otherwise, I probably would have said his two. So it really comes out on top or balances out anyways. Yeah, I'm looking to two teams heading in different directions kind of thing. I'm going to start with, the one that, the more likely situation is the Boston Bruins. Obviously, they may not have a lot of substance, but there's still a lot of prospects that can be appealing to other teams. Just looking at, some OHL stats, John Farinacci is actually looking pretty good this season as a rookie for the Providence Bruins. John Beecher, also some names that could possibly be dealt that they're looking to bring in a rental or a high name rental. I don't know if they're like high value names, but they're ones that could be significant roles or can play significant roles in a bottom six role kind of thing. And I mean, Beecher has looked pretty good with the Bruins, albeit limited minutes, but when he's playing, you notice his impact very well. And the other one is on the LA Kings because they're just holding on to a playoff spot right now, or the wild card spot. And they've gone on a massive losing streak. They had to fire their head coach. Chances are a big name trade or a big trade is going to happen in the process. I don't know how they're going to get it done because if you bring in somebody, you have to worry about some contracts, namely Pierre-Luc Dubois, $8.5 million, because that's really starting to look very, very ugly right now. If you have to give somebody up, you're probably looking at Alex Turcotte, who really hasn't cracked the lineup as much, or maybe he just has. I mean, he's dealt with his own fair share of injuries as well in the past and inconsistencies in his game. Just really hasn't found his game at the next level to try and crack the roster. I mean, he has gotten some opportunities, but nothing that just screams out, hey, you know what, we're going to keep you up here. We're like, I mean, it is very limited roles. I mean, 8 games in 21-22, 4 games last season, and only 2 games this season, but he was a point per game in the 2 games played this year. So maybe he is on the up and up, and maybe the LA Kings can trade him to a team that's going to be saying, hey, you know what, you could use some help. We got a guy that's ready to make that jump.
Turcotte has, again, another guy that's kind of, like you said, dealt with injuries, very talented guy. So he definitely, again, a lot of upside still in his game. He's not old. He's still in that range where he could turn it around and be still a legitimate player in the NHL. So that's a guy to watch for sure. And the Bruins, I mean, I'm looking at maybe even a guy like Fabian Lysell. You know, if they want to make a big move, then he's their top prospect that could potentially bring in a big name. I don't know what big name. I mean, the Bruins are doing really well with what they have. I don't know if they want to disrupt anything by bringing in someone that could do that. So it's going to be interesting. But Lysell, I keep thinking that they're going to deal him at some point. And he's doing pretty well in the AHL this season. So we'll see. We'll see what the Bruins do, because I think they will bring in. They did a lot of stuff at the deadline last year. Didn't work out. They got kicked in the first round, but maybe they're going to shy away from that and see if they can just do it without doing any big moves. So they're a team to watch for sure. Okay, let's move on to the aforementioned AHL and do a little bit of a check-in. We haven't really done one in a while with the AHL, and we've talked about a few prospects from there, namely Logan Stankoven, who leads the AHL in scoring right now. So who knows? He may be one of our guys we're going to talk about here. But I'll start with you, Peter. Who do you have from the AHL that you're kind of, I don't know, surprised by, stand out, someone that you're kind of, you want to kind of mention here?
I just got to give a big shout out to Shane Wright, because I mean, I know we talked about him last week when we were doing our top 100 prospects, but you know, second in goals as a rookie behind 2 only Stankoven. Wright has 18, Stankoven has 20. It really shows that, you know, maybe the issues with Wright are probably way behind him. You know, he's finding the back of the net consistently. We've seen his shot and how lethal he was in the past. And now this season, 32 points, not bad production at all, if you ask me, in 41 games this season with Coachella Valley. Another one I want to highlight too that's really standing out is Nikita Chibrikov from the Manitoba Moose right now. 31 points this season. He's 7th among rookies, and he has, you know, kind of a better track record right now as a rookie scorer than Brad Lambert. See, I keep on doing that. I think of the musician Adam Lambert. Wow. Brad Lambert. Sorry. Adam Lambert's still a phenomenal musician anyways, but he's ahead of Brad Lambert by only 3 points. So, you know, it's not a big deal, but the jump that he's made so far this season is actually really impressive. And when you talk about prospects in the Jets system, you automatically think McGroarty, Lambert, Lucius. Chibrikov is right up there, and he's got a fantastic two-way game and a hard-nosed game as well. So really excited to see what he can still bring.
Yeah, when there's these the Jets have quite a few really high-end prospects. You forget about some of their mid guys that could potentially do something as well. So yeah, that's a great shout out for sure. Dayton, who do you got from the AHL that you kind of want to shout out here?
Yeah, I mean, you have to mention Stankoven again. He's just too good.
Yeah.
His interestingly though, I think it's his teammate Maverick Bork who is second in points.
Yeah.
So that's like, how is Dallas got two of the best AHL kids right now? That's unfair. Brant Clark is doing quite well in LA. Or for LA, I guess. He's with, is it Ontario now?
Ontario
Yeah.
Reign, yeah.
Yeah. For a little bit, they were changing their team. It felt like every other year. I had trouble keeping track. Anyways, yes. So he's got over a point per game, making him one of the better defensemen, if not the best, in that league. And yeah, when I was doing a little research for, was it the 2022 draft? He was somebody I thought could be, 21 or 22. I'm a little fuzzy right now. Could have competed for like a top first overall pick, with that being sort of a weaker draft. So I like seeing that he has really kind of emerged as this excellent defenseman. And they're probably waiting till he can kind of take over for Drew Doughty. I can see that kind of be the long-term plan. And I did talk about Owen Zellweger last podcast. Struggling.
It's real.
Yeah, he's been great. The last guy I'll mention before I really, put my foot in my mouth is Dustin Wolf, who's been at least on Elite Prospects here, second best goalie in the entire league, which has just followed a remarkable career of excellence.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a time where he's looked out of place in any league. Maybe his NHL stints, which I don't know if they went fantastic, but that's a kid who's going to be an amazing goalie. Like, he's following in the footsteps of UC Saros, sort of an undersized, but just a brick wall. So I'm glad that he's continuing to do good. 927 save percentage, 227 goals against. Yeah, the kid's incredible.
He shouldn't be in the AHL. Like Calgary's got to do something. I mean, they got to trade Vladar, and Markstrom I don't think is going anywhere, but they got to trade Vladar. Get Wolf up there, back up. I mean, he's just too good for the AHL. He just shouldn't be down here, down there. So it's we'll see. We'll see what the Calgary does, because I don't think he should be down there right now. All right, before we move on to our second half of the show, I will mention Arshdeep Bains, because he just won the AHL All-Star Game MVP last night. I believe it was last night. Yes, it was. That, as we record, he had 2 goals and an assist in the All-Star Game, and then won the MVP award. And it was a game-winning goal that his second goal was. So has having a great season. He's got 40 points in 40 games. He's a point a game guy. Already surpassed his career high or not career high, but his rookie season of 38 points. Hasn't got the 13 goals yet, but he's got more assists. So he's really, we were already talking about in WHL. He led the league in scoring. He's moved on to the AHL now as undrafted. I want to see him in the NHL, see what he can do, because I think he could be a great third, fourth line option for the Canucks. And we'll see when that happens, because the Canucks are just stacked down to the bottom 6 right now. Next year, maybe they'll have some room, because Lafferty's a free agent, Bluger's a free agent, Dakota Joshua's a free agent. So maybe he'll take one of their spots, because he does play a lot like those guys. So Arshdeep Bains has sure been great, and he was an undrafted guy, and I'm happy to see that he's kind of translated his production from the WHL into the AHL, and hopefully the NHL soon too. Okay, before we move on, got to mention our Substack again here. Make sure checking out that. We got one dedicated to the NHL draft and prospects. That's going to be ramping up a lot more in the future here. Once the trade deadline's over, it's going to be draft all day long. So we're going to be talking about the draft quite a bit, and that Substack will be filled to the brim with that. Dayton runs that. So make sure checking that out. Sign up link in the video description below. All right. Well, before we move on to the second half, we just mentioned the Substack. Dayton, you just put out a great article about different and a league that's been kind of changing been in the news quite a bit. So I'll let you take it away. Latest premium article on the Substack here.
Yeah, of course, I don't want to give away too much. You should subscribe to get the full thing. But the AJHL and BCHL, two junior A leagues in Western Canada here, have sort of taken over some of the news storm. To sum it up very quickly, the BCHL put out a tweet saying that 5 teams from the AJHL in Alberta were going to join their league next year. The AJHL reacted very poorly to this and immediately banned all of those teams, those 5 teams, which included the Brooks Bandits, which I'm sure most of us have heard of, the Sherwood Park Crusaders, and then there was a few others that aren't as well known, but still top teams this year. The AJHL teams that were banned and removed from playing any games in the schedule were beside themselves. They put out tweets saying, "We didn't agree to anything. We think this punishment is way too harsh. Like, what's going on?" The AJHL didn't budge though, and so they are currently playing in the BCHL. They already joined. So it's like the league kind of just pushed them out early. And as I'm reading all of this stuff, I start thinking this sounds a lot like when the WHL was formed, which was very explosive, I guess we can say.
Yeah.
A very charismatic hockey promoter named Bill Hunter was sort of at the center of it. And seeing a lot of these parallels makes me wonder about the future of junior hockey in Western Canada and what could happen now that one league is basically a third less of its size.
Yeah.
Another one has added 5 excellent teams that are only going to get better. So it's a very interesting time to follow the AJHL, BCHL, and all junior A hockey in Canada. And that's our latest Substack premium article. So if you want to read more, go subscribe.
Check that out. Yeah, it's a great article. So I mean, yeah, check it out. Peter, before we move on, do you have any thoughts about that whole situation there?
Just hectic. Again, a lot of it was one of those news articles that came out of nowhere, and it's very interesting to see how it's going to play out because, teams like Sherwood Park, Brooks, they have been the top tier development for players in the AJHL system. I mean, we've seen a lot of players get picked from there. To see them go and join the BCHL. Again, the BCHL is still, a relatively good system, but now that you've taken their top 2 teams out of there, that's going to put a damper on a lot of teams' development because they were like the what is it what they do for ratings? S tier, A tier, B tier, whatever. Sure, those 2 teams were the S tier, or at least Brooks was. Get those 2 teams out. That's really going to put a damper on one league, and one league is going to benefit from that. But then again, BCHL, if it was divided for teams in British Columbia, so be it. I don't know where the poaching came from or what happened, but yeah, it just seems like a lot of drama is going to be unfolding.
Yeah, there's been some last draft, I believe it was Aiden Fink was part of Brooks Bandit. So yeah, there's been some NHL prospects that's gone through that system. So that's gonna be something to follow for sure. So check that article out by Dayton on the premium Substack. All right, moving on to the OHL, and speaking of top prospects for the draft, there are quite a few in this league. But we're not going to start there. We're going to start with standouts that have already been drafted, and there's a few of those guys too. Start with you, Peter. Who do you got that I may have talked about these guys already, but they definitely deserve more.
Surprisingly, I haven't talked about David Goyette much compared to last season, and we talked quite a bit about how dynamic he was as a playmaker. And this season, he's just on another level, tearing up the OHL. 75 points already in 47 games. Just incredible what he's able to do with the puck and how skilled he is. And he's taking that skill level to whole new heights right now, just decimating the competition. He had 92 points last season, on pace for 109. So looking to surpass those numbers this season. And yeah, the Seattle Kraken drafted him late in the second round. I probably had him a little bit higher up, but this is looking like a really good selection for them. The fact that I believe they had multiple picks in that round, and taking Goyette is really starting to pay off with that. So I probably should have been talking to him about him a lot more this season, because he's been consistent from the very beginning till now. And the fact that, the assists are still piling up, the creativity still there, his handling with the puck, the smarts and the awareness. I think that was the one thing where maybe he tried to do a little bit too much last season, and that led to me being a little bit concerned about his puck control. But, the play-in points speak for itself at this point right now.
Mm-hmm. That and another Kraken prospect there. They've done a great job in their first few years in the league. That their prospect pool is pretty good for being so young as a franchise. Dayton, over to you. Who do you got that you want to shout out from the OHL that's been drafted already?
Yeah, one guy I've tried to keep an eye on as much as I can has been Denver Barkey. I wrote about him before the draft. I was the one who put out his draft profile for the Hockey Writers, and that sort of turned me on to who he was as a player. And he was just a dynamic force with the puck. He didn't shy away from physicality, despite being, I think he's only 5'9", 5'8" in his draft year. And he still put up over a point per game. He has an excellent eye for passing lanes, and he's only gotten better this year. He's on pace to hit 100 points, and just makes things happen around him. Philadelphia Flyers pick, he shouldn't have gone as late as he did. I think, was he a second rounder, or was he in the third?
He's a fourth.
Was he a fourth?
Yeah.
No, third.
Okay.
It was a third, 95th. Yeah, my mistake.
Okay, yeah. If he was fourth,
I was thinking of Jaden Perron as a fourth.
Oh yeah, that's also stupid.
Yeah.
My goodness. So the Flyers robbed. He should have been a second rounder.
Yeah,
at the very least. I think tough would have been tough for him to get into the first round, but definitely a second rounder, at least caliber of talent. And he's once again proving that you can't sleep on these little guys who know how to use the puck. These guys know how to get around that physical element and that size difference. They are smart players. And that's what Denver Barkey is. He's such a smart, creative player. And I'm really interested to see how he does in the next levels. He's been really, really good this year.
I just made myself look stupid. Jada Perron was taken before Denver Barkey, so they're both third rounders. There we go.
Still
shouldn't have gone that late.
They shouldn't have been drafted in the third round. That's the key takeaway.
If you take away anything, that's what we're getting at.
They shouldn't have been drafted that low. There was a few in that draft where we're like, why are they dropping so much? But it's just size, and that's the problem. I don't know why that's still a thing. There's been so many players that have just proven that wrong, but it's still going to happen. Big guy's always going to get drafted before the little guy. It's just how it goes. All right, draft eligibles now. This will be our focus for the next 3-4 months. So, Peter, who do you got for a draft eligible from the OHL? There's quite a few of them in this one.
I already talked about Sam Dickinson a lot, Liam Greentree, Zane Parekh. I want to move away from the top tier names from the OHL and focus on ones that not many have been known or should start to know right now. And one of them is I think of a player who could be this year's Easton Cowan in terms of second half development, consistency, smarts, work ethic, and that's Jetlachenko from the Guelph Storm. I have been really high on him since about, I want to say, the beginning of the season. There was one game that I saw with the Storm while I was scouting or watching, the London Knights, Sam Dickinson at the very beginning, and then I saw Lachenko play, and I really took notice of the speed that he had and the work ethic. And then as I watched more of him, you saw the skill, the ability to turn on the jets and slow the pace of the game down when he needed to, then turn it back on. He's got eyes at the back of his head. He can make very strong passes. Can shield the puck very well. Despite he's listed as 5'11", 183, so he's got decent strength. Still needs to work on that. But when he was on that OHL line at the top prospects game with Greentree and Beckett Seneca, you started to see why he's a well-regarded centerman or a guy that could be a very solid 2-3 option in the future because of that energy and the pace and the speed. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do right now. He's leading the Storm in points, 53 and 48 games. Storm are, kind of, they're middle of the pack. They're still decent, but Lachenko is definitely the main point producer on that team right now, and he's very, very effective getting the minutes and the impact that he's having right now.
Yeah, that's a great shout out. We got to focus on the more lesser known guys because we talk a lot about the top names, and it is great to talk about some other guys that you may not know about. So definitely keep an eye on him. Dayton, who do you have you want to shout out here as someone
just to clarify, am I not allowed to talk about the top guys?
You can talk about the top guys. You can definitely. They deserve it too.
Just bugging you. I did actually pick a lower tier guy as well because I think he's getting slept on, and that's Luke Misa.
Yes,
he is again another smaller guy, 5'10", but he could reasonably hit 90 points this year on a Mississauga team that doesn't have a lot of NHL talent. They are sitting, I think, third in their division. Forgive me if I make any mistakes. I am very far removed from the OHL physically. But he's just doing quite well and is not getting any of the recognition that he should have for that. Like Central Scouting put him 45th. Like that's insulting. I know there's a lot of good prospects in the league, but he's much better than that.
Yeah,
definitely a mid second rounder to maybe considered for a late first, depending on how the rest of the season goes.
Yeah, Misa's gonna be. I think he's probably gonna be drafted lower, and that's gonna be one where we'd be like, that's probably too low where he does get drafted.
We'll talk about him next year during this segment.
No, most likely. There'll be a few of them, I'm sure. Okay, so that's our OHL and AHL check-in. We're going to do a couple more throughout the season, but we're going to move on to other leagues next week and talk about maybe the WHL, NCAA, stuff like that, and overseas. But I'm going to do a quick fire now and focus on the teams that we all cover here. And since we talked about the AHL, Dayton, who are you most excited to see as a call-up for the Senators in the future here? It could be this season. It could be next season. Who are you excited to see?
Well, it almost certainly won't be this season, but Zach Ostapchuk. He is a very interesting prospect. He hasn't had the greatest rookie season with Belleville Senators. 14 points in 40 games, 9 of which are goals. Like that's decent. He's at a little over a 14% shooting percentage, or at least was at the end of January. My numbers might be a little off here, but he is very much modeled as basically a poor man's Ridley Gregg. So Ridley Gregg, in case you haven't seen, is shaping up to be an excellent middle six guy. He's got snarl. He can score. He just makes things happen around him, kind of like I've said for a couple of guys. And he's very much in that Senators mentality of, following with Brady Tkachuk. you got a little bit of grit while also having that top end skill. Ostapchuk doesn't quite have the same top end skill, but he is definitely a guy who makes things happen. And I'm very interested to see the kind of a heart and soul type of guy. I know you said quick fire. I'm sorry.
Quick as in it. Yeah, that's fine. That's okay. Quick enough.
Next one will be quicker.
It's good. We want to have some detail in it too. Peter, who do you got as someone that you're excited to see from the Maple Leafs, from the Marlies in the future here?
Kind of a few, but I'm going to stick with one in the important position, and that's Dennis Hildeby. The Maple Leafs need some consistency in goaltending. It looked like that was the case early on. Got called up, didn't play any games because of the whole Elias Samsonov situation. Got sent back down, really struggled to find his game, but now it seems like he's starting to get back on track. The last 2 games, he's had a, decent record. Not decent record, but decent results in his last 2 games where he had a shutout just before the All-Star break, and the game before that, a .969 save percentage and 1 goal against Wilkes-Barre Scranton. So hopefully the struggles or like bumps in the road are done for Hildeby. Hopefully there's going to be more opportunities for him in the future as well.
Yeah, the Maple Leafs, their goaltending has been a little bit in flux a bit. Wall's been great. And I think he's the future of the goaltending, and Hildeby could be his backup in the near future as well. So yeah, and Maples are doing a bit better with their homegrown goaltending lately. And in the past, it's all been free agents and stuff like that. So that's a good sign. You got 2 now that could potentially be a tandem rather than just a couple free agents that you keep moving through. For me, and I already mentioned him, is Arshdeep Bains. I want to see him in the NHL at some point. I don't know if it's going to be this season. It could be, depending on how it kind of works out. But yeah, I want to see him in the NHL because I think he's just going to be a heck of a bottom 6 guy. And just a great, gritty, and could score to maybe 10, 15 goals a season. So yeah, I'm excited to see him. I already saw Linus Karlsson. He's been kind of in and out of the lineup. He's like the call up that they just keep calling up. There's always a guy that just call up and he's there. He's that one this season. So yeah, Bains is for me. All right. Now there could be a few of these guys, and I'll start with you, Peter. Who is your MVP amongst prospects and that the whole system for the Maple Leafs right now?
That's kind of easy. That's Easton Cowan at this point, going from unknown to just tearing it up with the London Knights right now. No, he's, despite missing some games early on, he's missed about 12 or so games behind because he was with the big club early on during preseason when the OHL season started. 64 points in 36 games. I mean, he's literally vaulted himself just behind Denver Barkey, and he's playing catch up still, but still impactful. The payoff is working out with the Maple Leafs when they made a selection. So he's my MVP right now.
Yeah, Cowan's definitely a big one. He was a surprise first round pick, and he's showing that he probably shouldn't have been surprised of where he got drafted. Dayton, who do you got as your MVP for the Senators prospect pool right now?
I'm not sure if this is a hot take, but I think for me, it's Levi Merilainen. He hasn't had the best AHL season. Started out really good, but last few games haven't been fantastic. Despite that, he is a guy who just keeps winning, almost like Dustin Wolf. And I'm wondering if this is a guy who could end up taking over the crease in Ottawa. He's got really interesting potential, and goalies are so hard to predict. I think this might be a guy to really keep an eye on in the next couple of years as he sort of adjusts to the North American kind of and professional game.
Yeah, there's another team that needs to find a goalie that can end up being a fixture rather than just keep moving through different free agents. And the Senators haven't had a stable goaltender since Craig Anderson. So It's been a few seasons. So maybe find someone finally. Maybe he'll be the guy. All right. I love this one. Oh, wait, I got to do mine. Jonathan Lekkerimäki is my MVP for the Canucks this season for prospects because he's just been on fire in the SHL. He just had another goal. I think he's tied for the league lead in the SHL for goals with 11. He had a heck of a World Juniors. He just bounced back from those injury problems he had last season. Looks like a legitimate top prospect again. Probably the top prospect in the Canucks system. I said Willander in my last rankings, but I'm pushing Lekkerimäki above him again. So he's my top prospect. He's also the MVP for the Canucks this season. All right, I love this one, underrated, because these are guys that we don't normally think as maybe top prospects, and maybe no one even knows about them. Who knows? But Dayton, who do you got as an underrated prospect in the Senators system right now?
I'm almost blown away that he is underrated because there's no reason that he should be, and that's Maxence Gwinnett. And yeah, he slipped under the radar. He's got 22 points in 38 AHL games. Pretty good as a defenseman. He almost made the team this year out of camp. Should have gotten called up by now. Still hasn't. I don't know why, other than there's no room. But Tyler Kleven got called up. I don't know. Why is he not getting these opportunities? He's done basically everything that he's been asked to do. And so maybe you're thinking, oh, well, he's probably a little guy, right? That's why he's not getting it. He's 6'3", and he shoots right. Like, why is he not getting the opportunities? He's a fantastic defenseman who is big. He's tough. He shoots the right way. I don't know. Why are the Senators not as high on Gwinnett as they honestly should be? He could be a difference maker, and I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
It's always interesting to see why guys aren't getting called up. And like they're doing well. Why? Maybe they're thinking he needs to have development down. Who knows?
Pretty sure he's going to the AHL All-Star game.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Ask me. I'm not sure.
That one frustrates me a little bit.
All right, Peter, who do you got from the Maple Leafs as an underrated guy right now?
I want to talk about him before that underrated label is shed, because there's still quite a few people not on board the Nikita Grebyankin train, and I'm going to make my final push for that right now, because it's going to be a long time, or it's going to be sometime before he's going to not be labeled as underrated because of the impact that he's having right now. He was Rookie of the Year in the KHL last season. He surpasses point totals from last season, 36 and 59 games. 21 years old, and still at that age, you're still trying to fight for, and he's not even in the VHL. He is in the KHL. Like, he paid his time in both the MHL, VHL previously, went to the KHL full-time last season, and he's risen above this time around. In the draft year, Wes Clark, I believe, called him machine-like in terms of his, strength, the power, his playmaking, the work ethic. We're seeing that again this season, and there's a good chance that maybe he could be coming over sooner rather than later, based on comments made by their head coach, where I believe it was both him and Marat Kusnedinov, where they want to go to the NHL, so be it. So I'm hoping he could come over as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I know you've mentioned him on the show before. He is definitely a guy that's going to be interesting to watch in the next few seasons if he does come over. It sounds like that's going to happen, so we'll watch him for sure. My underrated is a guy that the Canucks drafted this past draft, and that is Sawyer Minio. I don't know if I think he's a bit underrated as on the defensive side, because everyone kind of thought he was just going to be a defensive defenseman. That's what he's going to be. He's looking like a bit more of a two-way guy this season. He's got 38 points in 41 games, 11 goals for the Seattle Thunderbirds on a very bad Thunderbirds team. They're not very good this season. They lost so many guys from their Memorial Cup time there. And Minio's now one of their top defensemen. He plays a ton of minutes, and he's on the power play, their penalty kill. and he's racking up the points. So Minio may actually turn out to be more of a two-way defenseman than we thought when he was drafted. So I'm going to say Minio is a bit of an underrated prospect in the Canucks pool right now. Now that Brzustewicz is gone, he's probably the guy you look at in junior that